Okay, Katja, so we were just chatting. You're a German living in the Netherlands, which to me sounds a bit more fun, perhaps, than
Why,
living in Germany.
why that? Why does it? Living in the Netherlands? That sounds more fun to you? Or?
I think so. Maybe it's just I'm just thinking of Amsterdam specifically rather than elsewhere in the Netherlands, but Amsterdam has this very like cool, loose kind of vibe, recreational drugs and all that. And then Germany, which I love Germany, but has the kind of bit more structured lifestyle, we could say. Is that a fair assessment, or is that just my
That's an
American
absolutely fair assessment. Although you have to
okay.
admit that Amsterdam is pretty much at the top and pretty much at the peak. And admittedly, over the last couple of years, it's still a cool place. Although it's, when cool places are over the top cool, then they
Right.
are for nobody really any cool anymore. I live in The Hague, there, which is 40 kilometers south of Amsterdam, and is the administrative capital of the country. And I'm working all over Europe anyway, so I'm not very much sitting in Amsterdam. Actually, if I can avoid it, I'm not there.
That makes sense. It's crowded. I bet you have a lot of the same
And
amenities
and
in Holland
yeah,
with less
and what you
people.
say about the more structured, you call it structured lifestyle in Germany. It's more, if I may say so, a mindset, right?
Mm,
It's a mindset that things have to be properly in order, like in terms of between the ears of Germans.
right.
That does not always match reality like reality. There is a lot of chaotic things in Germany, and it is more in we aim for that structure. And in a country or in a culture, let me put it like that, that is pretty much a linear active. You do one thing after the other, and you try to you try to do one thing after another, right? And
Yeah.
not everything at the same time.
Right. 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 And
So
that's a
that makes it.
no, please.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just think it kind of makes sense that it's an older culture relative to say the U.S. or any of the kind of newer democracies in the world. Or the U.S., everyone's quite excited and running
Yeah,
around and multitasking. But the older cultures have a longer memory and kind of a a way of this is probably the best way to do things. But yeah,
I,
I thought that
I
was
don't think it's
interesting.
at the best way, but culture is what we do when no one is looking, right? Culture is that this
Mm.
this very deeply rooted thing in ourselves that we say like, yeah, yeah, that's the way things are properly done, and and that very often gives us a sense of being right. Although, and you see that in communication a lot, that your truth is one truth, and there is many other truths out there, which makes
Mm.
it, to be honest, in our world, the most wonderful thing.
Yeah, certainly, because it's kind of a way to express what's going on internally. Like I have a analogy I like that each of us have a universe within ourselves.
Hmm.
Possibilities, challenges, fears, frustrations, anxieties, all that good stuff. And how we communicate and how we express is one. It's kind of like trying to express a three-dimensional concept with a two-dimensional term, basically. Like, how do I communicate all this craziness going on inside of me to someone else and convey what I'm experiencing? Yeah.
At least to make another universe, as you call it,
Mm.
and understand what is um, what is happening between my ears, right? Because we, for ourselves, in our individuals, we very much find our own language. We can easily talk to ourselves, but the moment we go outside and we have another universe that we need to get into and we need to match with. It all of a sudden seems to seems to be really problematic, right? And we really struggle with it.
Totally.
Mhm.
So you said your work brings you around Europe geographically. Do you have a vertical or an industry that you work with the most as far as clients? Or,
I in the beginning, 20 years back, when I started, I thought it would be the media and the IT industry,
Mhm.
which is the industry I'm coming from. This is the industry I started, advertising, PR, marketing, media, and the classical IT companies. The more the more I got into communication training, coaching, public speaking, I the more I realized, even more consciously, that the problems are the same everywhere, right?
Mm.
I thought it might be that especially the IT people couldn't express themselves.
Right, right.
This is totally untrue. It's totally
Right.
untrue. I thought like, okay, it might be specific problem there, but that is just has been the case because I was working in that industry more than in others. The deeper I dived into other industries, energy, for instance, is a very fascinating one because it's very structured, complicated, and masculine driven, engineering driven, and and full of beautiful technology. And it seems that people who are communicating that technology have real trouble to get stuff across, right? And then let's take another industry. Let's take the healthcare, right? Let's take the whole healthcare industry where people are extremely uh, caring, right? Where people are extremely uh, giving and less taking. And it seems like that they have the same communication problems, just more in the green part, right?
Mm.
So so that is basically what I'm experiencing.
In the green part,
Yeah, you know,
what
the
does that
IT,
mean?
the IT problems are blue and the others are green, but it's the same kind
Sure.
of problem. They just have a different shade. I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha,
So,
gotcha.
and that's why I do not work in any vertical anymore. Over time, there is a lot of startups that work with me, or I work with a lot of startups. But that naturally happened because my way of approaching a topic is very energetic and lively and less conservative than others, and that might be the point that why younger companies, entrepreneurs like to work with me more.
Yes, definitely. Okay, and then I always love to ask entrepreneurs too about taking the leap or stepping away from the normal path because at some point there had to be a moment in the process where you decided, okay, I'm going to leave. Sounds like it was a PR career, maybe a bit more structure, more security, and kind of stake out on my own. So, what were the factors that led to that decision? And yeah, I think that's a good first question.
In my particular case, when I started my career in the 90s, um, being a team player was a very big thing.
Mm.
Like my team player was, and it still is, but over the last 20 years, a lot of things changed here, and team and working in a team and high performance is seen differently now. Now, at that time, um, I tried to fit in what I did not know at the time. I'm not a very good team player. I'm simply not a
Really?
very good team player. No, no. I like to work in teams, but they have to be very, you know, dedicated special teams.
Mm.
So I'm not one of these all in everybody around one table person, especially not when it comes down to business. But I didn't know that at the time. And I tried to play along and I tried to fit in, which is a hard thing to do. Usually it's the introvert people that say, oh, nobody lets me talking. I don't know how to open my mouth. Now I had a contrary problem. All right, I was exactly on the other side. Like I say, okay, guys, the way we do it here, it probably will not work for this product or for that service. So you can imagine you're not becoming you're not you're not becoming everybody starting with that, right? And it
Sure.
took me a while and a couple of bruises. And in 2006, when I set up my own shop, it was like a relief. Although, of course, you, as an entrepreneur, you take the full responsibility for everything you do, for every decision you
Hmm.
take. But on the other hand, um, I could all of a sudden decide what I understood uh, under a team, and that changed things for the better. And I think it's better for the world, and it's better for me what we do now.
Awesome. So, could you give us an example of the types of engagements that you would take on? What is the problem at hand? Is it between team members, understanding each other, external communication with clients? Is it some all of the above? What is the kind of skill set you bring to the table, and what types of problems are you solving?
The last question is probably the most relevant one. What kind of problems do I solve? I understand. I solve all problems of being misunderstood,
Mm,
right? So when you work with me, all of a sudden afterwards, people are understood much better. They can get their message across more easily. And when I'm saying easy, I mean easy for both sides, because it's not just the audience that needs to understand the message. The sender should be fine with the way, should be feel comfortable, should be feel energized by their own speech. And so these getting messages across easily and do it in a way that nobody is hurt and everybody
mm,
is heard, right? So that you, you as a sender, you're part of the show, and as the receiver of the communication, you're part of the show too. So this is more important to me than the format, teams or two people or on stage and the audience is in room. I think to me this is has the second priority. The first priority is how does the person or the group get their messages across. Yesterday I was conducting a training for a guy who is working at a tax advisory and was applying internally for a new job. And it was very hard for him to introduce himself in a way that was making it easier for his audience to understand him, to understand where he came from. So we more in that particular way, we very often work on narrative. We work on the agility of the communication. But if it's two people or if it's a group of people, actually, that's second priority to me. I do
very
it in
cool.
three languages though, and I love having audiences that come from more than one culture. That is the coolest thing on earth.
That is very cool because those cultures have their own narratives about what's what and how
Absolutely.
things
Their
should
own
be.
narratives and their own cultures and their own narratives and their own ways of communicating. And that makes it double and triple fun.
So what's the third language? English, German,
And Dutch.
and Dutch. Very cool.
Yes. Yes.
Very cool. Okay, so how do you approach? I think you kind of alluded to it. So the narrative and how we present, but when you're making an assessment of someone's communication, someone comes to you and says, "Hey, Katja, my superior is really not hearing me. My coworkers don't understand me. I think that I think I'm a hard worker. I have a lot to bring, but they perceive me as egotistical and kind of I can tell I annoy them. So what are the ways that you kind of investigate and figure out what's going sideways in those interactions?
Let me give you one example of one thing I do that I love very much, and that is what we call shadowing. Right?
Mm.
I love to be part of that person's business life for a particular time. That could be 2 hours, that could be 2 weeks, that could be shadowing on a conference, or that could be shadowing one business day that consists of particular meetings. Interesting enough, you see, when doing shadowing, you see a lot of things that you would not see or hear in a conversation, because they happen subconsciously. They happen along the way. And to me, observing a client there in his natural habitat, let me put it like that, gives you a lot of hints and a lot of backgrounds how things really are. Now that is something I love to do, and that I bring to the first conversations we have. And besides that, there is so many interesting and good psychological analysis. If it's Myers-Briggs or if it's spiral dynamics, there is a lot of analysis tools you could lay underneath the analysis. And this is where we usually start. And then we take it from there, depending on what that analysis shows.
Awesome. And for your success metrics, are these kind of goal driven? So the client, let's say your current day client wants to get promoted, and so success is measured by his promotion or not? Or do you kind of make an assessment and suggest as well, hey, like you came to me for this promotion problem, but here are other areas where I think we can improve too?
Yeah, the way you put it, actually that matches it. Mostly clients come with one or two concrete and specific things that in the end show not to be the only goals they have. Indeed, mostly what I'm very keen on, what I very mostly do is that I let the persons themselves name these goals. It's not me setting the goals, but coachee has to get into his own shoes, and that is why the person can determine how big the steps are they are taking. Then the success is better. But along the way, we very often see more than one goal happening. Yeah.
Right. I feel so often with these self-discovery processes, more things just pop up. Yeah.
Or
So you mentioned
something from a deeper layer comes that you have never talked about, and you think, oh yeah, all of a sudden that pops up. Why? Should we talk about that? Should we work on that? Yeah.
Totally. That's the good stuff. That's what we're doing on my program and so many others. It's a good encouragement for people to kind of look within. So you mentioned earlier the core of your skill set is in helping others be understood. And so much, at least over in the US, much of the conversation has kind of shifted in the last couple of years with kind of, I would say, diversity and inclusion becoming a bit more than just a tagline, becoming a bit more concrete in the example of, some minority groups saying, hey, it's like my being, my belonging isn't honored here, or just my presence is kind of not respected because I'm different. And there have been a lot of really personal and public expressions of that. Who's listening is a different question, but I was curious I wonder if those topics and that sense of belonging for, the other or the kind of marginalized groups has also come up in your work, and if you've kind of seen that become more prevalent with your clients.
Absolutely. And the good part for me is that, we talk minority groups. I always call them cultural clusters, because the groups I work with very often that feel not heard is probably not I don't know, a black community, or it's specific cluster within a company. It's like, okay, nobody listens to marketing. Or, right? Yeah, right? Or in this
uh,
company, only the engineers talk. Ah, so this is more in diversity and inclusion cluster. Because interesting enough, you find it in every company. You can if you dive into the culture of one company, you see where where is the money, where is the power, and who is having influence. And if you work then with the groups who do not have the influence but want to seek it, now then it's getting interesting, and that has less to do with what kind of culture you belong to, but what cluster you have within a company. And I can tell you, this is a very interesting adventure to see. How do you help someone from a marketing department who is usually silenced by engineers? How do you help that person to speak up, right? So
totally.
that is a very it can be the other way around. It can be a company. I'm working with a sports company where the marketing department and the PR department, now the marketing sponsoring, are doing big stuff, the biggest, right? And everybody else, the rest of the company, is a very small operation, really small, and it's held small. So you have the feeling that only the marketing department is talking there, and no one else. I'm sometimes wondering how they make products, right? So to me, it's a very interesting journey to get, especially the departments, the cultural clusters that are not heard within a company. Then they cannot be part of the innovation. But that is necessary. They have to contribute to the innovation of the company, and they have to contribute to the purpose of the company, because that never comes only from one department. And so that's why I'm working with these diversity and inclusion things quite some time. And let me quote the Netflix thing. Reed Hastings said, "Diversity is the invitation to the party. Inclusion is when everybody dances." Right? And that everybody dances,
I love
that is
that.
so important. It's a wonderful quote from him, right? Because it it tells us a lot about where we are at the moment. At the moment, we are sending out invitations. We do our best, but we do not make sure, once everyone is in the room, that the music is perfect for everybody and everybody can work or move comfortably. And that, I think, is much more important to get, especially in the business environment, when you really want people, to do something. You want them to achieve something. They have to do a project. They have to execute something, and they wanna win, actually. So we have to make sure that they can work comfortably and not just be part of the team, right? And that's a different thing. And that will
That's a
be
very different
through
thing.
inclusion.
And I've seen examples and know people too who've been brought in to be a kind of diversity strategist, but then once they've presented their findings or their kind of proposed cultural changes, the leadership backs off of it or isn't supportive because change management. There's a reason change management is its own industry and its own field because it's hard. People are resistant to change, and I think it kind of gets back to the self-awareness piece we talked about because I feel
Yes, I just wanted to say that, right? Exactly.
yeah,
It goes back there. Yeah, yeah, totally right.
because people what we bring to work is not separated from our egos and our failures and our fears. All of these things are brought together and they come with us to work too. So I feel like just because a lot of people, this is a theory, like professionals, just because they are professional and they work very hard, they take their job seriously, it doesn't kind of bestow an automatic innocence or automatic free pass of like you're doing everything you can just because you're organized and on time. You know, there's like our baggage comes with us to work, and I think the things you talked about of how the power dynamics play out, the fact that there are power imbalances in every organization you've worked with, kind of alludes to that. Like if we were all perfect people at work, then you wouldn't be in a job, perhaps, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well,
Hmm.
what you call baggage, I always call toolkit. And very often
Nice.
we are not aware of our own toolkit, right? You bring your toolkit, you just very often don't use it, right? It's there and you don't do anything with it. And indeed, when you start working with people, say, "Hey, wow, this is something very valuable to your life, to what you do. So what, use it more often, de-rust it or de-dust it, and exercise on it, because we are. That is one of my findings. We are capable of so much more. We are
Hmm.
really wonderful human beings. We are, and very often it is something different that we are capable of than what we expect. And that's part of the communication journey when people work with me, that they all of a sudden discover things that like, really? Oh, I didn't know I can do that. Or I'm much better in this. But very often it's something different. It's not what they expected from themselves. And to me personally, this is something I like most about that job, that there is so many surprises that the clients have about themselves. And when they can expand their portfolio or extend their toolkit, I'm I'm the most happy person on the planet, because this is my mission.
It's beautiful. So my show, the Bro Nouveau podcast, also is about helping men be more expressive and talk about real things. So curious to hear about how that gender dynamic plays out with your clients. You know, the trope or the generalization is that men are less expressive, for example. Do you see that to be true, or is it really person dependent based on your clients?
And you're touch basing on such an important point here, because it's very true and it's
Mm,
very untrue.
hmm hmm
It's if you look into an ordinary meeting room in the car manufacturing industry, you will find that to be true statistically, right? 90% men, 10% women, if you're lucky. 95% men talking, 5% women talking. But the real aspect we should talk about is not men and women per se, but is masculine and feminine communication patterns. Yes, what you say is right statistically, but again, statistically, men seem to use masculine communication patterns more often.
Mm.
A direct communication. Do this! Exclamation marks. That is a masculine communication pattern. And again, statistically, it's at the moment it is bound more to men than to women. Now, in what I would see as the way to go is that we teach everybody, men, women, everybody in between, whatever you want to be read for, whatever you want to be, if we teach everybody as well masculine communication pattern as feminine communication patterns, because they per se have nothing to do with men or women, right? Per se, asking a question which is a feminine communication pattern is not bound to men or women, right? It statistically seems to be that women ask more questions or using communication form of asking a question more frequently. But it's not bound to women. So if we teach everybody to use feminine and masculine communications patterns at the right moment in the right situation, now then everything is going to be fine. Right? Because imagine the following situation. You are sitting with your team and you're developing a project and everything is working fine, and you are starting with a brainstorming and you collect all the ideas and you do all the feminine communication patterns. You collect everybody's opinion and everybody feels good. And that goes on and on and on during the whole project. Now you will see that your team, your project team, is getting impatient, because there must be, at a certain moment, there must be a decision. This is the way we go. Exclamation mark. And if you're lacking that particular strength, if you're lacking that particular thing in your toolkit, you will never succeed. The other way around, imagine you would go into that project, and in your first session, which is supposed to be a brainstorming session, you are going into that session as, okay, everybody, ideas on the table now. Probably no one will do anything, right? Because that is a very masculine communication pattern that does not match the situation, brainstorming, that requires a feminine pattern. And if you look at our normal business days, in the office, virtually, it doesn't matter. There is more the situation that require a certain pattern than being a man or a woman. Again, statistically, masculine communication patterns are at the moment more attached to men, but that's not the point. And if you get rid of that point, if everybody is able to work in the matching communication pattern in the respective situation, then I think we are going to have a whole different ballgame in communication.
I agree. And it's a skill to be learned too, right? Again, self-awareness of what's going on in the moment. So where are we in the project? What's the objective right now? Would it be helpful for me to ask questions, or would it be helpful for me to propose a solution?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So my proposal is, let's rethink that, and then let's redo it. And then I think we will get out of the gender discussion more easily, or we will bring it to a different level, right? Although at the moment right now, we have a very sometimes funny, sometimes not so funny discussion going on when women try to find their place at the boardroom table and do not get a chance. And then very often communication is the last problem they have, like really the last problem. I had a client last week, only woman in a boardroom in her company. 3 people in her team, and basically 0 budget. So yes, she has a seat at the table, but she has no power at all.
But no real power.
And right. So and that it's nice. It's nice that she has that place, but it's not going to work. It's very hard. It's very hard for and it needs all support for everybody. Right. And yes, the cake does not get particularly bigger. So there needs to be alternatives for a lot of people who are sitting at the boardrooms now. And that is a complicated thing. Yeah.
Very complicated. Because there's also, depends on the size of the company, or maybe not, but long-standing board members, for example, could be inclined to be territorial or unwilling to share the power, particularly
nicely put of you. Very nicely put.
Thank you. Yeah, and
Mostly
particularly, if they've never worked with a woman in power as well, right? If they've never interacted with a woman on this level, it could be confusing, it could be intimidating, it could be threatening. And so,
And don't be mistaken here, by the way, the same problem you find if you turn around the industries. Imagine that young father who wants to be in the board of, let's say, a large kindergarten, for instance, where 95% of the board members are female. So it's the same problem there. Women do not want to share power as well. Actually,
power
they don't,
corrupts.
right? It is yeah, exactly. So I think that we should find a different way of giving away power to people. For instance, give power only for a certain time. It could be something, right? To say, okay, it's 8 years, 10 years. There are so many. We are smart as human beings. We are smart creatures. We should find a solution to that. That makes it easier for everybody to bring their their talents to the table. Many people will say, like, look, my talent is not in the boardroom. No, okay. But right now, we make it look like, oh, the boardroom is your final goal. It should be your final destination. No. No.
Yeah.
I repair washing machines, and I'm totally fine with that. Right? So it's in us to change that whole paradigm of how we see next generations doing their businesses.
Yes, and I think the whole boardroom image is also tied with this super strict business world. And I think perhaps the greatest example of that being turned upside down is in Silicon Valley, in the tech industry, where these companies that are some of the most profitable, highest valuation companies in history, people are wearing flip-flops and shorts, and their building doesn't burn down. So it's personal style as well, right? So like, say for example, I work at a tech company, but I like to wear button-down shirts and shoes, because I like, for me, putting on a shirt, it's a symbolic thing. It gets me focused. It gets me in the right mindset. But if someone else doesn't want to do that and they work best relaxed, cheers.
Yeah.
Do your thing.
Yeah.
I'll be by your side working. And that's a cool thing too about I would say, looking back in history, right? Like the printing press and like disseminating information and the Industrial Revolution and these big changes. But now there's this possibility for future generations where there's so much information and potential that can be accessed online. And we're going to see more and more smart kids make companies that are kind of in their own vision and mold, rather than just this traditional strict boardroom, white starched collared shirts and scotch on Fridays. Like it doesn't have to be that.
And it's more than KPIs too, right? When we are turning towards a purpose driven and a purpose driven work, where we say, like, look, there needs to be more than a revenue at the end of the month. The moment we start including in our corporate communications, right? May it be the yearly reports, what goes out to the stock exchange, all that. The moment we start to include holistically everything that's going on with the company, the well-being of the people, the sustainability index, so that we really say how sustainable is that company towards the environment, how sustainable is the company towards its employees. If we would, and I think this is something we should aim for, if we would include that into our yearly reports, now then we would get honest numbers, and the paradigms would probably totally change from KPIs and end of the quarter and to restock or whatever, towards a way more long-term and sustainable development.
Yeah, yeah. The sustainability one is interesting because I think like people benefiting culture can be a little more easily defined. So like how many, let's say, people are being hired or developed from an entry level to a senior manager position. Where are their backgrounds? Were their parents, university educated and professionals or not? Like, there's some ways to kind of define kind of upward social mobility, but I think the ideas around sustainability is also very complicated because there's so much conflicting information. Some people think that climate change is, you know, humans are contributing to it, but it's also part of longer cycles. Some people are quite fatalistic, and it's like how do we apply the concepts of sustainability to a corporation, and what are the metrics that matter? That's a whole different question, but I feel like
Yeah,
it's kind of hard to figure out. Yeah.
but that is something we should be busy with. That is because I think the future of corporations, big or small, lies in that we totally turn around the parameters of success, right? Because there is already enough stuff in the world. I mean, like we produce enough, right? Now we need to distribute the wealth in a different way.
Yes. Yeah, certainly. And also within kind of developed cultures or societies, say like the US and the EU, but also between kind of developing nations and um, developing economies, how to share the wealth. Like I'm in the Philippines right now, and one of the most major involvements of foreign companies are for call centers because the Philippines has quite a strong English skill set.
Yep.
And I feel like that's good, but is that enough? Like answering, essentially outsourcing for cheap labor, relative cheap labor to answer phones. I guess it's a good start, but that's probably not the endpoint we want to be at of just having that type of collaboration between, the economies.
Because then you would just build, just build two monocultural clusters as well, right? And the more
Hmm.
multicultural the clusters are we build, the more open they are at the borders, the more translucent, the more transparent, the more exchange there is possible. That would help us, and indeed. So to your point, no, that I think is just the beginning, right, and not the end. What they do with the call centers.
Awesome. Cool. Katja, vielen Dank für deine Zeit. Und wo kann die
You're so
Leute
welcome.
finden deine Werk ins Internet?
It's very simple to find me because there is not many people with my name. So it's www.katjaschleicher.com. Or of course the easiest probably is to find me on LinkedIn, the business network, because there, besides my portfolio, there is an easy opportunity to chat with me. And I'm since a couple of weeks I'm a fancy TikToker. I think
Nice.
TikTok is more my it's more my platform than Instagram is, because Instagram is just photo. It's static, and
Mhm.
TikTok I like more because of this the short little video clips. This is more my communication style, and so yeah, you can find me on TikTok too.
Wonderful. We also end with a conversation game. Um, my deck of cards has eluded me, but I can just create a question for you, and maybe you can ask me one back.
Okay.
Okay. So I will ask you if you could live anywhere in the world besides where you live right now, where would it be and why?
Um, There is so many parts in the world. There is. I would love to live the southern part of the Alps, so the northern part of
Ooh,
Italy.
yeah.
That would be great. Um,
That would be great.
I definitely would like to live somewhere on a lake. Lake is
Mhm.
cool. Is cool for me. And then there is a couple. I definitely. I don't think I'm going to do, but I would love to do a year in Hong Kong. Not now anymore. I definitely would love to do Singapore
Mhm.
for a couple of months, and then I'd love to do something like totally unexpected, crazy, like Mongolia or Ulaanbaatar, something like this.
Sweet.
So fresh up my mind.
Yeah, yeah. Yep, yep. That's certainly traveling does that. Wonderful. Cool. Well, it was a wonderful conversation. Thank you very much for your time. I found it very interesting and certainly look forward to sharing this with my audience. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
For sure.